Alright folks, I've never messed with a Famicom before, so I bought 12. Uh, they're untested. I don't have a power cord for them. That'll be here in a few days. But today, what I'm going to do is unbox them, see how they look, and clean them. So we're going to see what they look like, disassemble them en masse, and clean them. So we'll get started with that. All I've done so far is just open them up. So there they are, all in a stack. So we'll see how this goes, and we'll see what happens. By the way, 12 Famicoms is not light. It's not that heavy, but it's not light either. So they were shipped pretty nicely, actually. Now I saw the pictures of these, and I picked them because it looked like I could potentially get the most good ones out of this. One thing I am interested to find out, and it should be pretty quickly obvious. So Super Nintendo controllers look like they'll fit in this. Again, I don't know whether any of these power on. However, the DC jack I do know is different than a Super Nintendo, so I'm going to be taking a look at that. I'm interested to see whether the multi-outs are the same. The screws are the same, so at least there's that. Going to be taking all of these and giving them a bath as well. That should clean up the outer case. So I am going to be disassembling these down past the boards and then disassembling the tops as well. Now the tops on a Super Nintendo are a pain in the butt. They're not difficult, they're just a lot of springs, and they're one of those things that I don't enjoy doing. So this should be interesting because I want to know whether the Famicoms are going to be the same or not. I also know that because of the cartridges, that you can't use the same cartridges you can in the US because the slot doesn't fit. But I'm wondering if I just plug in the board, whether the board itself will actually play a North American game. It should, because the region system on these things is using a region lockout chip, but the difference between North America and Japan is actually just a physical restriction on the cartridge. It's not an electrical restriction on the cartridge. So if the physical cartridge will actually go into the slot, which it should, and I'm immediately dropping everything everywhere, so that's a good start. As I said, I have not done this, especially on camera before, so there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve as I'm thinking about what I'm doing. Right away, this case is cracked right here, so that kind of sucks, but yeah, you know, it's just a little cosmetic damage. This thing is a filthy mess, which doesn't really surprise me. The inside is actually doesn't look to be nearly as obnoxious as a Super Nintendo. So we'll see how that actually pans out in the long run. But at the moment, it doesn't look to be really that different. Which is kind of what I was hoping. I was kind of hoping that this would be, roughly similar to a Super Nintendo, and that some of the parts themselves might be interchangeable a little bit. Now, I want to make sure it looks like this just pops out. Let's find out. Yep, okay, that just pops out. So that's not bad. This looks like the clip just... Let me see if I've got a better tool for this. Let's just see how much resistance this actually gives. Yeah. That's, I don't know. Let's see if there's a... Oh wait, I see. Okay, well that's better. It looks like the entire the entire top pops off. So what I'm hoping to do is get some of these disassembled, well, all of them disassembled and cleaned, but I'm hoping that they are relatively restorable and that I can fix these things and pass them on to people who really want them. I don't own a Super Fam. Well, I guess technically I own 12, but I don't own a Super Famicom myself. So I'm kind of excited to actually own a Super Famicom. And I do like some Japanese games. I'm not a huge fan. And I can't read Japanese, so it's not a huge deal to me, but I love this stuff, hence why I'm working on it. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. I just heard something rattle and fall, though, so we'll see. Ah, there it is. There it is. Okay. Yeah, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. So I'm going to be taking a couple trips off of the camera here in order to transport these things to a bathtub. And then, yeah, just run hot water over this crap and really get these things, gussied up a little bit here. Yeah, that's not that bad. It's not that bad. I mean, it could definitely be worse. Let's get the next part out. Oh, I guess that can get washed, can't it? All right, so this thing's filthy. This thing is really filthy, and it's going to need a solid clean. I'm not surprised, but at the same time, we can fix that. So why not? Why not? As you can see, as far as disassembling the console, the tops of these I'm not familiar with, but I am very familiar with Super Nintendos. And this looks like, at the moment, it looks like the boards are essentially the same. Actually, it looks like they're exactly the same. The sound card's in the same place, the shielding is in the same place. I'm interested to see whether most of these have removable cartridge slots or not. In the US, I believe it's the later models. I always get it confused. I believe it's the later models have cartridge slots that are soldered to the board, which is kind of a pain in the butt. It's not the worst. It's, you can deal with it, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. Now, a quick thing to note about taking these apart: silver screws on either side of the cartridge slot and silver screws on either side of the multi out in the back. So if you remember that, it's actually not that bad to take these apart. The gold screws all go around the chassis and the sound card, and the gold screws with the little washer on them, they go on the underside and they hold this heat shield in place. This thing is super stinky, but I'm sort of unfortunately getting used to that. Oh, there's always the second one back here. I always forget about that one. A lot of the Super Nintendos that I've worked on have not had the sound card. The sound card, that thing is messy. The reason I'm smelling it, by the way, that's gross, and believe me, I don't want to do it either. But the reason I'm smelling it is because I'd like to know whether all of this is just dust from neglect, or whether this is dust because some liquid got down in here and did some damage. And I've had cat pee on these. I've had all sorts of stuff on these. So I do like to know sort of what's going on. And this is HVCP, which is SHVC, which is interesting because that means that the boards are the same as the Super Nintendos. The ones that are different then are the PAL regions. And as you can see, you can remove that and you're good to go. So the fact that the boards are the same is really, really, really nice. If we can't, again, I'm going to try putting a cartridge in here and see what we get. And that'll be, that'll be kind of nice. But there we go. Later models, they remove the bottom heat shield. So if you are at home and you're opening up your own, you may not have that heat shield. That's why. The bottom heat shield is not on all of the models. You can see here what I was talking about. Oh, God, that corrosion is nasty. I'll probably go through these boards and just clean them up. I'm really, really, really interested in seeing whether the really interested in seeing whether they power on or not. And I think I have a power adapter that will work in the meantime while I'm waiting for the official. I don't want to burn the boards out either. As you can imagine, even 12 that were not working and untested were not the cheapest thing in the world. They're not that expensive. But, it's not like it just cost me $3 to find out. I have some skin in this game. So what I'm hoping is that some of this stuff will actually work, and that I can, if nothing else, I can use it to repair some of the North American systems that I have as well, so that no parts go to waste. There is right here, as you can see, front a screw for the voltage regulator, and it is different. It has 2 washers on it. So the single washers, like this, where they are, let's see if I can get that into focus. They're single washers, and they have like a little spiky thing on them. Those are for this heat shield. So that's how you can tell that apart. As I said, I'm just going to unhook all of these. Take the stacks of all the parts that are plastic. Obviously, don't put your metal in. And don't forget the metal standoffs. Those are kind of important. So I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to give them all a bath. Now, I am interested, because of the one chip, I am interested to see whether the one chip exists in these models as well. I really don't know. We're going to find out. All right, that's one. That's one. Now, on to the next one. This RF shielding, heat shielding and cartridge slots, I'm going to get to it. That's going to be a little bit of a different thing because I'm going to have to clean it a little more meticulously. Front panels. I never really looked at that. I don't think you can, yeah, there, I could desolder these, and I could desolder this and then unclip it, but it still looks like it's hooked in here. I kind of like to take one of these apart and see. Oh, it does look like the front plate will come off. Let's see. Let's find out. That would be kind of a useful thing if it does, because I do like to clean these front plates if I can. And I do want to work on de-yellowing, although that'll be a different time and a different video. But it will happen too. So looks like you do need to desolder. Huh, that's kind of interesting. I'm kind of I'm a little bit confused. Here, let me put this aside and we'll just see. So there are the pins right down in here, for the cartridge for the controllers. What I'm trying to do is get this front plate off, and as you can see, there's a line right here where it separates. So, and this is the clip for that, but I think this clips to this, and if I have a different screwdriver bit. I really don't want to be swapping bits out all the time here, just for the sake of brevity, but I'll test on one, see where I get. And I think that's going to be pretty successful, yeah. Look at that. All right, cool. Well, we can clean one more thing. That's neat. So what I'll do for the rest of these is I'll just set them aside, and then we'll disassemble those one by one. I don't really want to get into the actual desoldering of the ports unless they look like complete crap. These look okay. They're not great. They're not horrible. I can get down in here and clean that with some alcohol and just swab it. I'm not that worried about it. The front plate here gets kind of grimy underneath. So we'll deal with that in a minute. But then let's get to the next one for the moment, shall we? See what happens. See what happens. That's awfully dark in color. The one interesting thing to me is the DC actually seems to be better on these than it is on the American, because the American consoles have those crappy, and I mean super crappy, plastic tabs that the power supply goes onto, and they're kind of useless. They break really, really easily, and then once they're broken, I mean, there's ways to replace it, but they're really not a very good. They're not a very good solution to this. Now, my suspicion is that it doesn't matter because the Japan and America both operate on, well, Japan's 100 volts, America's 110. But they're close enough that there's no damage done, and I suspect that the voltage regulator will actually handle these just the same way as it would an American console. So if that's the case, it may be better and easier to swap out the power ports on these for the Super Nintendo ones if the Super Nintendo ones are broken and these are unrepairable. I don't want to remove any of these systems from circulation. I love Super Nintendos. It's my favorite system. It's one of my favorite things out there. Obviously, because I'm working on it, and you know, a lot of this stuff is cool. It isn't necessarily fun. Just because it's cool doesn't necessarily mean that it's fun. And this stuff can definitely be a real pain in the butt. Yeah, as you can see already, I've got a little bit of a better plan on that. I know a little bit more what I'm doing than it looks like. Even if I do a couple boneheaded things, just bear with me. There is a learning curve to the camera. Now, as I mentioned, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off. I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to set that aside, and we'll deal with that later. I would like to get, you know, figuring out the location for all of this. I don't have the most space here, so I am going to have to work on how to fit things. But you know, this is a different board because it doesn't come out all the way. So yeah, we're getting into different board revisions here. And you know, to me, that's one of the most exciting parts is this board removal. Because it's really exciting. You can't see what the board revision is until you lift this heatsink. So this shielding. So you're just sitting there sort of in anticipation of what system you're actually looking at until you physically pull this heat shielding, which is one of the other reasons. I mean, I have to go for it. I can't take this thing off the off the board without it. But it's also one of the reasons that I'm going so fast to take that off, because it's really exciting to actually see what's underneath. And a lot of these look like they've just been in storage for a long time, and they've got a lot of moisture damage on them, a lot of corrosion. I've got to work on figuring out how to clean that up nicely. But you know, we'll get to that. All right, so this is just a GPM. Okay. Okay. Not all the GPMs have the removable cartridge slot, so I'm happy to see that. The more of these I have, the better. The ones that are a real pain, and I tried to get some from anywhere actually when I was looking at fixing my original Super Nintendo. So what got me into this was I always loved Super Nintendos. I loved it when a friend had one. I'm not married to the Super Nintendo specifically. I like the Genesis as well. I think they've all got their merits. I got to play Super Nintendo the most because most people around where I grew up were into Super Nintendos more than they were into Genesis. I love some things like Shinobi 3. I think it's an insanely good game. It's one of my favorites of all time. When people say that, you know, Genesis had no good games, I disagree with that emphatically. I think that Super Nintendo overall, as far as the system goes, it's really hard to beat. As just pure, sheer number of good games, the Super Nintendo had a ton, and they were really, really good. Whereas, you know, when you got to the Genesis, most of them, from what I've experienced, were crap. But the ones that were good like the best of the Super Nintendo games. So, you know, not nearly as many good games, but the good ones were just so good that you really shouldn't count the system out just because of those few. I'm trying to keep this a little bit separate, but we'll see. We'll see how I do on that. And I always forget to unscrew that, but that's why I always wiggle that gently, because there's no reason not to. Now, I did have my friend disassemble and clean a bunch of Super Nintendo games, of the Super Nintendo consoles. So all of the Famicom ones are going to fall to me, which is fine. It's actually one of the reasons why I just step back and let him do all the Super Nintendo, because I knew I'd be in for the Famicoms, and that would be a thing, and just, you know, I just decided to suck it up. These tops are kind of a pain in the to get out, actually. Yeah, they are kind of a pain. And they all have this hinge so far. I'm hoping that this isn't in all of them. I really hate that hinge. I really hate that hinge. And I really don't want to deal with it once, let alone a lot. So hopefully we're going to avoid that. Well, the good news is that the plastic on these doesn't seem to be brittle. I was a little concerned about these things just breaking when I was trying to take them apart, but they actually seem pretty resilient, which is nice. That is a bit of a weight off of the mind. All that goes well. Now, what I would like to know... Oh, it's the power LED. Okay, yeah, that's. I'm not surprised. I thought that might be the case. A little plastic thing came out earlier, and I was trying to figure out where it went, because, you know, learning. But, yeah, looks like that's another one. I guess the guy who did this did a pretty good job on the shipping and packing quality. It's not too bad. right. I have a suspicion that this box is going to become the box where everything sits on the shelf there. We do have a shelf of systems, and it is slowly growing. But what you going to do? All right. A lot of these things are scuffed on the bottom. They're pretty beat up. The boards so far have looked all right. So unless they had power and water damage all at the same time, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm hoping that they'll work. There may be a lot of corrosion in the cartridge slots. That's my biggest concern. There isn't on the board. The boards have looked relatively clean. So that's kind of nice. And that kind of gives me some hope. But you know, if we've got 12 systems here that all effectively work, well, that'd be pretty sweet. That would be pretty sweet. Let's see. These game bit screwdrivers are pretty good, but they're kind of a pain in the butt at the same time. I mean, Nintendo's proprietary stuff here is kind of a pain in general. That reminds me, I need to remove the extension flat from all those that I just took in there. Okay. Okay. That's easy peasy. Good Lord. These must have just sat in like a storage shed or something. I'd like to know the story behind these. I mean, if nothing else, just to know the story behind them. It's kind of cool. I wonder what this guy had a whole bunch of them. Had been doing a lot of different auctions and stuff like that. So, yeah, I just like to know the story, whether it's beneficial to or not. It's kind of fascinating, but it's kind of fascinating. I really want to just plug one of these suckers in and, you know, like hook it up to a American multi-out and see whether it works. I really want to do it, but that can happen in good time. That's just being impatient and excited about the possibilities that could exist here. Yeah, that's the beginning and the end of that. And it's really a good idea to let most of those excitements take control, because then you usually do something stupid and you end up messing something up where it would have been fine if you'd just been patient and waited, as opposed to lost your patience and jumped the gun. Well, so yeah, all the revisions though do look to be the same. I mean, they look to be the same as the American. So if that's the case, I wonder if we'll find a one chip in here. That would be kind of cool. Turns out that my own personal, I didn't know this when I bought it, but it turns out that my own personal is a one chip 001. So that was kind of the multi-out died on it, and it was one of those moments where you touch something, you don't do any changes to it, and then it just dies. That's dicey. I'd like to know why that's so shiny compared to that side. Looks like, yeah. They're just mucked up. Yeah, like I really need to figure out a good way to clean that quickly. I'm gonna take the sound card off. I'm gonna have to get in here anyway. Well, if you wanted a dust bunny in your house, this was a good way to start. Let's see. This is SHBC as well. I'm looking for an RGB board or something like that. Just for fun. Just for fun. I really do need to find a place to put this stuff. Ugh, that's intense. Let's just dump that in the trash can. Good Lord, that's stiff. Where is that going? Oh, that's the... Okay, that's the RF. Normally the RF is a silver screw like this. Oh no, that is the... Looks like somebody's been in here. Because normally this one is the silver one, not the gold one. So I think somebody has beaten me to this one, and I'm actually going to put this one in and leave it. For a couple reasons. Consistency is one, and the other is I don't want any tugging on these. I would rather just have it be sturdy and strong. Rather. We'll see. We'll see in the end, won't we? Alright. Hey look, even I can learn. Make sure you remember this one for once. So that's kind of cool. There's that. I'm gonna need to take a shower after doing this crap. I'm looking for either mod attempts or obvious work done on these or anything. And because that's so much shinier than the rest, it just makes me wonder if somebody didn't try and actually do something to that board. But it is what it is, and we'll see. We shall see. That's really the only one that you need to get out. The rest are, it just comes out easy once you get the clips undone. Of course, getting the clips undone is kind of a pain by itself, but whatever. Yeah, I think I like the construction of these more than I like the Super Nintendo construction. As far as disassembly goes, there's fewer like screws and stuff in the top here. This is being stubborn. These tabs they're clearing, but they're like too big for the hole, and I really don't want to force them too much because I really don't want to break the top. Oh, I see. They're already broken. They were already broken. I don't think that's something I did here either. it looks like they just were that way. So maybe if I can get one side off here, the other side will come a little bit more easily. Yeah. Alright, well, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. One tab broke off. That was stupid. That was stupid. Yeah, the tab that was well, it's still there. Yeah, that tab busted off. So nothing I can do about that, and I'm not gonna worry about it. So that'll take care of that.